Forecasting the Personal Cloud, a three-part series helping you launch your business to new heights by finding ways to manage and monetize your data. In this episode, the personal cloud, what is it? What makes it personal and why should it matter to you? Common misconceptions. How are you dealing with the data explosion going on in business today?
We went from being satisfied with 1 terabyte to needing 4 terabytes to needing 10 terabytes within like 6 months.
A California auto repair shop builds their own network storage system and improves customer care.
We have dedicated software for each of the makes of vehicles that we work on to help us with the diagnosis and testing on the vehicles. We want to store that in a central location.
And Safe Care Medical Center. Their CEO talks about what it takes to compete in a highly regulated industry.
Our physicians rely heavily on the fact that the data that they need to access is accessible anywhere.
Forecasting the personal cloud. You have questions, we have answers. Let's get started. And we're hoping to provide some of those answers starting right now. Hi everybody, I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. Welcome in to our three-part online video series called Forecasting the Personal Cloud. The goal, very simply, in this series is to have a lively, engaging discussion with you, focused primarily towards small and medium business people, about the personal cloud, about your data and being more efficient and more effective in managing it and monetizing, finding ways to save money, make money, do business better. Forecasting the personal cloud. And again, SMBs, if you're in a service business, you are out there, you're a chiropractor or an auto body, you're in a products business, you're out there selling yogurt, or you're selling shoes, or if you're in a industry that's got compliance as an issue, maybe it's highly regulated like healthcare or finance. If you're a small business, you all have the same needs, and we're here to talk to you. And we want to talk to you because this show, sponsored by Intel, we want to thank them for being a sponsor that powers so many products and so many solutions when it comes to these things. Your comments are welcome, your questions are welcome, and you can simply do that by going to Twitter and using the hashtag #PersonalCloud to join us on this three-part series, Forecasting the Personal Cloud. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our two experts on this show. I am clearly not the expert when it comes to cloud computing, although people have said that my head's in the clouds. Nick Saber, the president of the Pulse Network, and Scott Liewehr, who is the principal and president of Digital Clarity Group.
That's right.
How are you, gentlemen?
Doing great.
Very good.
All right, so I know you guys are excited about talking about this. I'm excited about it too because I've already learned so much just preparing for this series. Scott, I want to talk with you. For people that don't know you, talk about who you are, talk about Digital Clarity Group and why you're passionate about this subject.
Yeah, sure. So Digital Clarity Group is a research and advisory firm focused on navigating leaders through the digital disruption. So essentially we are 9 folks, so we are a small business, the ones we're talking to here today, right? And we are focused on speaking, writing, advising around the notion of the digital transformation and adaptive technology. So the cloud is certainly one of those elements of that.
Absolutely.
And Nick, as the president of the Pulse here, I mean, you're our guy when it comes to this because you're a gadget guy. Yeah. You've always been a guy that's been about data, haven't you?
Yeah, no, I've always been passionate about this subject since I, touched my first 40 megabyte hard drive back in college. I mean, storage and content really at the foundation of the Pulse Network, right? I mean, all we do is produce content all day long, but I think in our general lives we produce content from a small business perspective, from a personal perspective. We're all about content, and that need is just growing and growing.
All right, so again, a quick reminder for you all out there that the three of us are here for you. Use the hashtag #PersonalCloud. You can tweet questions into us at any time during the show. We're going to continue to take questions all throughout the show if you have them on the points we get to. We've got case studies, we've got examples, we've got things that we want to bring up. So to get the debate, if you will, and the discussion started, we're going to put up let me say this is my definition of the personal cloud. We put a stake in the ground. You can disagree with it. There's a lot of confusion, I think, out there when it comes to this. But what is the personal cloud? Well, let's give you a definition of what we say is the personal cloud. The ability to create a personal, private view of your own data, secure a backup, give access to you and your employees and anybody else that you choose, The personal cloud is a dedicated server that is yours and yours exclusively. The equipment is housed locally. It is a complement to the public cloud. If I had to pick out 3 key words in there, guys, it is the fact that it's personal, private view of your own data, access, which doesn't necessarily make it personal, but locally. It's also housed locally. Let's talk about that definition. Do you agree with it? Where do you go with that discussion?
I think that's where the debate starts, right? I think that probably Microsoft and Google and Dropbox might have a little bit of a slight difference in terms of how they view the personal cloud, and it's really your slice of their cloud. But I think that it's really good for businesses to really understand that there are devices that are out there that are powered by Intel that these companies like QNAP and Western Digital and Thecus, sorry, I couldn't pronounce it, Thecus produce, that really allow you to create your own personal cloud that gives you a little bit more of that see, touch, and feel aspect of the personal cloud.
What resonates with you when you look at that particular definition of the personal
Sure. I think obviously the part about the notion of the cloud is what we typically think of as the public cloud, right? What's available and getting it up there and being managed by other folks. But the part about your definition that I actually like that introduces a new element to it, or not necessarily new, but one that people might not otherwise think through, is that notion of locale, right? Of having something local as well, right? So there are some things we're going to talk about, the implications maybe of having being the public cloud, but having that personal cloud have a device that's local, a network access device, can help to offset some of those other things. And I think that's not necessarily commonly thought of when people, if you go Google what the personal cloud is, I'm not sure you'll always find that definition, but I think we'll talk a lot today about the advantages
let's
of that.
do this, guys, right now. Let's go to a video right now. This is just a video that is to me, very simple to understand, and it's one explanation that puts it in context of how the personal cloud works. Here you go.
The small office. You've got your devices and all that data. Here's network attached storage to get your data all in one place. You can access it from anywhere. It doesn't really fly, it goes over the web. This is just for effect. And send things from anywhere, where it goes safely and securely back to your office storage server. You can even remotely back up data to your server with a cell phone. Say a laptop in the office goes down. Load the backed up data and applications on another machine and you're up and running.
A lot of talking points we can take out of this, but to me, let's focus on the devices. When you start thinking about the personal cloud and you think about local and you think about your own, we're now starting to get into the devices. Technology is not all about the devices, but in this case, let's focus on the devices. It's changing now, isn't it?
Absolutely. I've been personally searching for a device of this type for the longest time, and we in the industry always have had network attached storage, but they've always been incredibly expensive devices that were incredibly complex to set up, that you needed an IT manager to get involved and really a full-time staff to manage. And I think that's what scared small businesses away from these types of devices. And I think the fact that there are now devices that really are plug and play and allow you to create your own personal cloud, give you mobility, give you mobile access to those files and that data really is a big plus.
I think another element to that, Nick, too, is the notion of that those devices used to be only available on your LAN, right? And so now, the fact that they're available on your LAN, you can back it up and you can know that it's sitting right there and everything is good, but at the same time, when you're away, it's syncing up to the public cloud as well, and you can get access to that same data from outside.
Let's go to a statistic, or a Gartner statistic, that sort of backs up all that we're talking about here, and I'll paraphrase it. It's the new PC is taking over for the old PC. The new PC being the personal cloud, the old PC being the personal computer. Steve Kleinhans, Research Vice President at Gartner, says this: major trends in client computing have shifted the market away from a focus on personal computers to a broader device perspective that includes smartphones, tablets, and other consumer devices. Many call this the post-PC era. And in this survey, Gartner goes on to say that the new era will provide users with a new level of flexibility with the devices, a new way to leverage the strengths of each device, and new levels of user satisfaction and productivity. So the new PC is the personal cloud.
Well, it's amazing. That's backed up by a stat that I just read on Engadget yesterday. Apple sold more iPhones, separate iPhones, and iPads individually than they sold of Macintosh computers. Yeah. So in each of those classes, they're selling more devices than they're selling of computers. It's incredible.
And we haven't even begun to talk about mobile yet.
Yeah, well, I think that quote is point. I think the whole notion of the post-PC era is a really good one, but it doesn't necessarily mean after the PC. It doesn't mean that it's gone or that there's a notion of mutual exclusivity here. I think what we're talking about is just a new way of working. What we're really talking about actually is the ubiquity of the web and the point that it's now about on any device, available at any time, from anywhere, and this is the way that we're working nowadays. And small businesses like mine, who have 9 people across 4 different countries and 4 states within the US even, who are obviously not local together, really can take advantage and leverage that.
I want to give you guys a question, and I want you to think about it for a second while we play another video. The question's going to be, when it comes to the personal cloud, what makes it personal? So here's another video that we produced along with our good friend Eileen Aginsky from Intel. This was back at the Consumer Electronics Show back in January. And this is just one physical demo, one type example of how the personal cloud works.
What we have here is a personal cloud, and at the center of the personal cloud is a network-attached storage device. This particular model has 4 bays and it holds up to 10 terabytes. These devices with Intel processors and chipsets inside go anywhere from 2 bays on up into the enterprise 8+ bays. And so this is really the center of the cloud, and what we're demoing here is we have your smartphone, and I am going to take a picture of our booth, real time right here, off of the phone. So I took the picture, and now I'm going to transfer this picture. I'm pretending that this is in my home, or somewhere else in my office perhaps, and I'm here at CES. I took this picture, and now I'm going to transfer that picture onto my home server. And it's now been transferred. You can see it's successfully transferred. And now I'm at Starbucks, or maybe I'm at a different place, and I'd like to bring that on up on a different device. So if I have an internet connection, I'm able to do that. And this is the picture that I took. It's now accessed there. I can make changes. Hi, to this. Then I can save it onto another file that's public here, and I can allow access to that file to my family, my friends, my work colleagues, or anybody else that might need to pull up or get that information.
That was a great video, actually. But the thing about that struck me is that when I think about the cloud, this notion of what makes it personal to me is that you can configure that in any way that you want. I mean, for Eileen there, it worked really well for her where she wanted to go and take that picture and then decide to go and upload that at that moment. And then she decided specifically to share that. For me in my business, I might want it to have it that every single time, Nick, that I add a document, take a picture like that it automatically uploads and it automatically is shareable. Or if it's a certain document type, to have it not do so or whatever. I can configure it as I want to, and that's the notion of the personal cloud that's really beneficial.
Yeah, I think that's a big point. I think that the ability really to be able to configure the device really in a much easier sense than we used to, and give different people access to different parts of the data and through very, very simple security is beautiful. But yet it is secure, and yet you still can touch and feel it. Is a huge point. And to be honest with you, like I bought one of those devices for my house, and really the ability for me to give access to my files and my photos and my the videos that I shoot with my kids, and give that to my parents or give that to my wife's parents, that's beautiful. I mean, it makes it all the difference.
So let me hammer home 2 points. To me, when I asked you guys both the question, what makes it personal, what I'm hearing is 2 words, customizable and local.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of these things you can have in the public cloud or the private cloud, whatever terms are out there, because we're going to get to misconceptions, I think, about the cloud in a second. But when it's customizable, when you can make it your own, and when the hardware and the devices are actually in your, that's what makes it personal to you guys,
I think people don't realize that these devices exist. I mean, that's the biggest misconception. That's one of the biggest problems. People don't understand that these devices exist and allow you to create your own version of a personal cloud that you have, security over. You have the ability to control.
Well, let's go to another statistic, another graphic for you that will get us to misconceptions about the cloud. And this put out in an article by Forbes magazine. It was Joe McKendrick. It was a survey of 780, think about this now, nearly 800 companies were surveyed. It's about cloud confidence. That 50% number, you can look at that in 2 ways. Cloud confidence is up because 50% of the 785 companies surveyed by this group, Northbridge Venture Partners, said that they have more confidence in the cloud, up from 13% the year before. But let's look at it the other way. It says that 50% of people do not have complete confidence in the cloud. There's still half of the people that are out there that don't have confidence in the cloud. Is that surprising to you guys?
Not at all. I'm not surprised by it that much, because I think people are not everybody's used to working this way. I think the folks like us, we have confidence and we use this stuff every day. We have to remember we're not always the typical example. The folks that you're surveying, there's plenty of folks who are still getting used to even sending an email on a phone, right? So I think it's a fair point, but that doesn't mean that everybody can't leverage that, and that there aren't some misconceptions that they maybe shouldn't be as worried about as they are.
Do you worry about security, Nick, when it comes to your data?
Well, listen, I think we all have to worry about security. I think the day you stop worrying about security is the day you're in trouble. But I think that I'm less worried. When you say worried, I mean, I believe in, if you do it correctly, you're going to be fine. I mean, again, I have all of my data accessible in the personal cloud, from my files to my financials to my personal financials to the company's financials. I mean, not that this is, we want people to hack, but I mean, it's all out there because, if you set it up correctly, it gives you the mobility that you're looking for, and you can trust it.
Well, back to this survey very quickly. Here's another number for you. When it comes to security, more than half, 55%, identify security as a concern to cloud adoption. So while people are less concerned, some like you and like you, Scott, there are still more than half of the people, at least in this representative survey, if we're talking to SMBs, and this is 785 companies, more than half of them are concerned about security.
And I think that's because they don't employ that local option, right? I think that if you utilize the personal cloud and you still maintain that local option, it gives you all the advantages of having the cloud, but you still have the security of having it and being able to see, touch, and feel the data and be able to put your hand on the device. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that people have. I mean, look at what we did here at the Pulse. We moved all of our servers to the cloud. And we trust our cloud provider, but at the same token, we still kept a smaller version of what we need to stay alive here in the office. Why? Just because, again, it's how you address the security and how you address those options I think make a difference.
It's the fallback option.
Right.
It's the notion that, can you go and say, let me keep all of my money under my mattress because I'm afraid that somebody's going to get into the banks and that's going to worry about? No, you have to be realistic and put the money, but at the same time, to know that you've got some security, whether it's FDIC or whatever, that's backing that up and supporting that, and you know that you can have that comfort level. We're not here to advocate that there is a security worry, but at the same time, that local option certainly is good, as you say.
So let's continue to hopefully try and clear up some of the confusion and talk about the misconceptions. We've talked about, a lot of people think there's no local option that you can do. I think we've talked that through enough. We've also talked about security risk. You guys just went into that. Let's go back to that graphic, if you will, Phil, and look at one other number, 38%. And I think this one's interesting. Again, these are 785 small to medium businesses that were surveyed. And 38% of them identify the implications of regulatory compliance as a concern to cloud adoption. Now, it's not just healthcare and finance industries, although those are two of the industries that have to be most compliant. But again, 38% of companies think to themselves, well, I got to be compliant. This isn't going to work for me. It's too complicated, or I don't know. Am I making assumptions here? What are they thinking?
No, I mean, that's exactly what they're worried about, the HIPAA regulations or whatever the regulations that they fall under, that they have to worry about personal information, where it has access, who has access to it, how is it being modified, how are they tracking it, how is it being backed up. And what you need to understand is that these devices can actually complement what you're doing in a very, very good way, and really allow you to do the things that you've been worried about in the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, again, giving your doctors or my accountant doesn't send me my tax return anymore on paper. They point me to a website and say, click on the PDF, right? I mean, all of that stuff is being stored now electronically because nobody wants to print out that kind of paper.
Yeah, and the counter to that same point that you make, if they are concerned about storing things and potentially could it be accessed by others for HIPAA regulation or whatever by others in the cloud, the counterpoint to that is, how about the fact that you've got to store and retain these documents for a really long time? Number one, that's going to increase the amount of data. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But number two is, what happens if your personal network went down or you lost your data on some sort of, if you don't have some sort of a notion of a cloud or a redundancy of some way, then you're really hosed as well. So I think both are legit.
All right, we've been talking about the industry. We've been talking about the landscape and what's going on out there. We're about to take a break and get into you guys and why this is important to you and how it can matter to your particular small and medium business. Before we go to that break, what's one other misconception, either one of you guys, about the cloud that sort of you think people always say and maybe they don't have a good understanding of it? Scott, sure. Anything come to mind?
I think uptime is one. So we've seen, Amazon have an issue with that at one point where they were down for a little bit, and some really popular websites went down because of that. And so I think there's this worry that the cloud isn't always necessarily going to be accessible. And so if I have it locally, I don't have to worry about that as much. Well, in fact, when we were talking about a small, medium business, if you actually look at our own ability to manage and ensure that we've got uptime versus that of an Amazon or somebody does it professionally, I think the notion of having your cloud sync to the public cloud, having the personal cloud, and having it also available also is really key.
When I talk to small business owners, and we talk to them all the time, they all tell me the same thing. It's hard to maintain an IT staff and be able to manage my own infrastructure. Or for IT managers in small companies, they're worried because they're one person handling the work of 3 or 4. So it's that same type of issue. And really, the ability of being able to buy at a very inexpensive price point, quite honestly, these localized devices that will allow you to configure your own personal cloud and give that flexibility where it's an hour and you're up and running, and give you that added security that Scott's talking about, where you can back up all of your data, and it complements what you're doing rather than replaces it completely. It's really, I think, something that everybody's got to take a look at.
He's Nick Saber. He's Scott Liewehr. I'm Butch Stearns. A reminder, you are watching Forecasting the Personal Cloud. #Personal Cloud. This is a conversation that we want you involved in. Your questions, your thoughts. Time for us to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into some solutions, some case studies, some specific companies in specific ways that they are addressing and finding solutions when it comes to managing and monetizing their data. You are watching Forecasting the Personal Cloud. There is an explosion of data going on in business today. Up next, John Saber of the Pulse Network talks about the needs for storage, access, and more.
We went from being satisfied with 1 terabyte to needing 4 terabytes to needing 10 terabytes within like 6 months.
Up next on Forecasting the Personal Cloud.
Hey everyone, Tyler Pyburn here of the Pulse Network, and thanks so much for tuning in to part 1 of a 3-part series about forecasting the personal cloud. Now I also want to remind you to tune in for episodes 2 and 3. Now on Thursday, August 2nd at 2 p.m., it's the key players. We'll meet the experts behind some of the biggest brands powering the personal cloud on what's driving the market. Then on Thursday, August 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, it's the Personal Cloud Showcase. That's where we'll take a deep look at the products, features, and benefits of the top personal cloud manufacturers. Just log on to thepulseonpersonalcloud.com for more information. And in the meanwhile, use #PersonalCloud to jump into the conversation. I'm Tyler Pyburn of the Pulse Network. Now back to Butch Stearns, Nick Saber, Scott Liewehr, and the big picture.
And when it comes to the big picture, we are talking about an explosion of data. You know it. You can categorize it any way you want in whatever business you are in. Look at this Gartner stat. Gartner predicts that worldwide consumer digital storage needs will grow from 320 exabytes, I don't even know what the hell an exabyte is, in 2011 to 4.1 zettabytes. What are we on, the Starship Enterprise? In 2016. This includes digital content stored in PCs, smartphones, tablets, HDDs, network-attached storage, and cloud repositories. I think we all know, whatever industry we're in, there is an explosion of data. Let's talk about that a little before we get to some case studies, some solutions, and some takeaways before we end this show, always a lot quicker than we want to. But when it comes to the explosion of data, it's really about the devices. It's really about the way data is being used also, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. I think that we can all understand in these day and age, as we're starting to digitize everything and really trying to get it in the hands of whoever needs access to it the quickest way possible. Our data needs are exploding tremendously. I mean, it used to be we'd pass around Word files and Excel files, and that was about all we did. You know, PowerPoint certainly came on the scene, Keynote, and that raised the level of graphics that we passed back and forth. But now all of a sudden, everything's a PDF. Everything might be, you know, where there's video, there's in music files or audio recordings of meetings. I mean, the proliferation of content is just exploding. I call it that, you know, really the transition from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0, because I'm looking at it now where, you know, we used to have these flat, you know, HTML-based websites and everything was flat. And now it's, okay, we need a CMS, we need all of our content in there, we need to be able to push more content, create content. Yeah. It's all of those things.
But when we talk about the quantity of data, there's another point here, Scott, isn't there? I mean, some people don't have voluminous data or tons of data. Is that a word? They have to deal with voluminous data that they have to deal with. But everybody has data, and everybody needs to know how to manage it better and how to massage it and have it make money for them.
And I think that's right. I think there's actually a danger where we've been talking about this notion of, you know, paperless offices for a really long time, more than 10 years, and trying to digitize all of this paper that you've got. Well, look, there's a challenge with that too. The challenge with that is, how do you now find that? I can leaf through a folder really easily and find something that I knew that I had in my my bar. Now when you're looking for a data file, how do you do that? So it's all about also the information about the information. Right. It's that metadata. It's how do you search for this? How do you find it? So I think it's really about that governance and managing that data, and how do you make it valuable to you? And that's also included as part of the explosion.
Let's get to some specific case studies. The one we're about to show you right now, you're going to hear from the CEO of SafeCare Medical Center. I'll let him tell you who he is and what his business is all about. But they're in the healthcare industry, a highly regulated industry. And here's one example of how data works within that company, the threats, the concerns, things that he's thinking about, and see if you can relate to some of this.
My name is Jordan Safey, and I'm the CEO of SafeCare Medical Center. I manage all aspects of the business of medicine, allowing our physicians to focus solely on patient care. We have 5 physicians across 2 offices, and we've been providing internal medicine services to the community for the past 40 years. Right now, we have data in 2 formats. We have paper charts, so our medical records are in paper charts, but all of our billing records are actually hosted in the cloud. I'm really concerned about the future of healthcare. When it comes to data and data storage, there's a big change going on. The government is forcing physician offices to become electronic, to create and have electronic medical records. So in order to have electronic medical records, we have to take the paper charts that we have now and then scan that in and store those paper charts into data form.
Jordan and SafeCare Medical Center, the perfect example of a small business. 2 offices, 5 doctors, tons of data, tons of need to use that data and have it accessed everywhere.
Well, now we're getting to the part that I really like when we're talking about the practical nature of these solutions, right? You always, watch these content where people will talk about stuff and they never get to the practical nature of what we're talking about and how it can really affect us. And this is it, right? These devices, these Intel-powered devices that are really, really smart, you really allow guys like Jordan, I can't wait to fly out there and help him set this up, because quite honestly, it's going to impact his business tremendously to be able to, again, he's worried about digitizing. He's got to worry, you talked about it earlier, how do I back all this content up, right? Yeah. How do I make sure I don't lose this? How do, you want to back it up to locally and then also to the public cloud. And that gives you that added level of protection where you couldn't get it before. And again, the mobility of allowing his doctors to see that stuff in remote offices, because I could set up 2 devices at a very inexpensive price, 1 in each office, and have them replicate to each other.
Yeah, just to add into that, and back to practicality again, we just started our business and had to look into how are we going to do this. We're collaborating across the world right now, right? And so we looked, just to draw a quick distinction between our definition that we've used today about the personal cloud, including that local access. Here's the point, the configuration I was talking about earlier and your ability to do that. If I looked at Dropbox. They have an ability to do that for a small business as well. The challenge for that with me was the way that it works is because it's not so personal, it syncs everything. And so therefore, if you and I are on a Dropbox thing together, you're automatically seamlessly syncing everything you've got, which for a personal, just for you, it's great. When you and I are a team, automatically every single time, I don't get to choose. I'm getting all your stuff too. So you're adding all those video files, my hard drive is having to grow with that as well. That's a problem when you scale up to 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Certainly when we're talking about medical records, it wouldn't work. So that configuration and ability is really key, I think.
One thing I want to bring up is the term dynamic data. And I'd like you guys both to comment on this, because while we look at all these different businesses now and get to the practical part of it, everybody has different needs, and like some businesses may have huge storage issues, others may have access that's much more important. But when it comes to dynamic data, here's what's common to me with every business. They all have a need to somehow use that data in a unique way. Not about just storing it, but use it. Customizable, have it local, do all that, all the things that these devices can offer you. But when it comes to dynamic data, you really, I mean, again, how is your data helping you make money or save you money to compete, right?
Exactly, and Scott alluded, mentioned this earlier in terms of being able to get access to it. And if you do it in a good way, right, you can find access to your files or the documents you're looking for, or a copy of an invoice, or the stuff that you had in a much faster fashion. I don't care if you're a marina, if you're a law office, if you're an accountant, or to your point earlier, if you're selling yogurt. It doesn't really matter. All of this stuff can affect us. And really, these zero configuration devices is stuff that it really can make an impact.
And if you're doing it right, your business is going to grow because you're either being more efficient, you're saving money, you're attracting new customers. One example of a growing business is us, right here at the Pulse Network. And here is John Saber, our IT guru here at the Pulse Network, to give you an example, self-serving, but how our business is growing and how we're addressing some of these issues.
I'm John Saber, and I'm CTO of the Pulse Network. When we started the Pulse a few years ago, in terms of storage, one of the biggest issues we had is that we were growing very quickly, and the cost to add storage was extremely high because you want the fast storage, you want to be able to put it in the network really quickly and have it turn on really quickly, and it was a very expensive price point to do that. The video is very large. To support the environment, we had to add more machines. So it's a virtual environment, so we had to add a bunch more computers. The video itself is very large because we store it in several formats, high-def formats and stuff like that. So that itself takes a lot. And we want to keep it all readily accessible. So it needs to be online. It can't be offline storage. We went from being satisfied with 1 terabyte to needing 4 terabytes to needing 10 terabytes within like 6 months. It just skyrocketed.
So Scott, we talked a lot, and you brought up this point about how it's customizable. Again, what are you doing with the data? We happen to be here at the Pulse. We need a lot of storage. We're in the video business. I would argue that everybody's in the video business these days, of whether they know it or not. But when it comes to video, and you look at video as a specific form of data, there are storage needs, but there are the dynamic needs to do something that's going to drive revenue with video.
Absolutely right. It's, when television first started, it was essentially radio with a picture, right? That's what it was. So when we have these new capabilities, our mindset is in the prior paradigm, the previous evolutionary paradigm, and we just try to use them in a little bit different ways. But really what it's talking about is how can we revolutionize the way that we do business to really take advantage of the cloud? How can you collaborate more effectively to be able to figure out new ways to work? How can you offer new capabilities to your clients? We talked about Jordan earlier. How can he improve his customer service to his patients by having this information in the cloud? Maybe they can access their information in ways they never could before, as opposed to just storing it digitally, right? So it is about that. What is the next generation of this?
Well, I mean, you and I could sit here and talk for hours about the needs that we have. Storing the video is only the beginning. Cool. We need to distribute it. We need to send it out. Clients want it in all different forms. They want it immediately. They want to be able to email it as well as use social channels.
Exactly. And just, getting back to a point that Scott made earlier, I mean, I've tried everything from Dropbox to SkyDrive to Google Drive, and I'm using 3 of them simultaneously right now, along with a personal cloud. And I think, you've got to understand what you're trying to accomplish and the best way to get it done. And to your point, you can't sync all your data to everybody. You've got to be able to customize it so that you want to understand what people have access to, what do you want them to have access to, and how to do it. And it's real easy to set that stuff up if you take the right approach.
You are watching this 3-part online video series called Forecasting the Personal Cloud. This is part 1. Scott Liewehr, Nick Saber, alongside I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. Coming up in episodes 2 and 3, this series, by the way, is sponsored by Intel. And parts 2 and 3, we are going to have people who are creating NAS products. And we're going to get into all 3 of those companies. We're going to have representatives on episodes 2 and 3 from Western Digital, from Thecus, and also from QNAP. Those 3 companies. Intel, of course, has relationships with many different companies, and we're going to highlight over this series all of the companies and how they're doing it. But 3 specific case studies that are working with those particular clients that are going to be guests, panelists on our episodes 2 and 3 we're about to show you right now. So see if some of this resonates with you in your business. The first one is a company out of Sunnyvale, California called European Auto Works. They're a very small business that deals specifically with people who drive German-made cars. They worked with Western Digital and their Sentinel product. Here is a soundbite, some information about what they're doing and their data needs.
I'm John Polstra. I work here at European Auto Works. I'm an ASE certified technician, helping people keep their cars running. At our shop here we have about 25 different computers, all networked together. We have dedicated software for each of the makes of vehicles that we work on to help us with the diagnosis and testing on the vehicles. We want to store that in a central location and then have that be able to be accessed by other computers on the network. And the Sentinel's been very useful at acting as a central storage system. So one of the things that I really liked about it when we installed it is how easy it was to install. We took the small little package out of the box, hooked it up to our network. It only took about an hour to deploy it into our network here at the shop.
So we're going to find common solutions with a lot of these people, but right there he was talking about storage and efficiency when it comes to that, and access to all of his people right away. And thus, what problems does it solve? Better customer satisfaction to these people who drive high-end cars.
Right. That's right. Well, the beauty of it is that for all the small and medium-sized business owners out there that either have an IT staff or don't have an IT staff, these, setting up these devices is quick and easy, and literally you just plug it into the cable. They come with built-in RAID. So for those of you who don't know what RAID is, you don't have to worry about setting it up. And for those of you who do understand what RAID is, there's multiple configuration levels that you can go from RAID 5 to RAID 6. I mean, you can do any type of setup you want with these devices. They, some of them store up to 6 to 12 drives on some of them. So you really have that flexibility, but you're not spending $100,000 to put that infrastructure in place. You're not building a server room, to get up and running. You can be in a mechanic's office, have, set that device on a set-top, on a tabletop, plug it into the network, and get ready and go.
So think about other companies that create so much data that storage is an issue. Besides video, I mean, there are so many of them. There are law firms, there are investment bankers, there are healthcare organizations. How about brain research? We have a company working with Thecus that is doing brain research, and they are a breaking ground company, an innovative company, and they've worked with Thecus with a storage device to help them be more efficient, manage their data better. When you look at this company and you see what they do, they have been able to, again, be a groundbreaking company by using Intel-powered device, Intel technology, business intelligence to allow them to take all this data, make sense of it, and put them in the forefront of what they're doing. Again, for any SMB, this is a good example.
Exactly. You can be around, in this particular case, you can be geographically dispersed. You can be around, like I said, I have 9 people on my team. We have 1 in Germany, 1 in LA, 1 in Canada, we're all over the place, and we wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have something like this.
In today's economy, you're seeing more and more of that, and it's like-minded individuals that don't necessarily live in the same place getting together and launching a great business. You've got to find ways to have that flexibility and to give people, the feeling like you're all in the same office at the same time.
And again, let me clarify, I sort of butchered that before. This is the University of California, Berkeley. And Jack Gallant is the professor there who's always been at the leading edge when it comes to this. But think of the data that he creates. And then think of the needs he has. I mean, this is a university. Let's talk a little bit about that in the public sector and when it comes to that, how you can, I mean, obviously their goal is to attract more students, better students, and do this. And now you're branding yourself by being on the forefront of doing some of this, by solving your data situations.
And it's not just, I think the thing is, the point you're making there is about for businesses that are centered around growing significantly in data, but there's plenty of businesses who don't necessarily associate themselves with that. That might not resonate. I'm not creating so much of this, and so therefore maybe this solution isn't for me, and that's not true, right? Because again, it's about what we talked about before. How can you leverage that and the way that these devices work so that you can in fact grow your business and extrapolate that? In the case that you talked about, Butch, where you've got UC Berkeley, and what information can they provide to others, even outside of their organization, about the research that's being conducted inside, in a way that puts them in a position that they are now the subject matter experts on this, and they own this domain. How can you do that? So there's a lot of ways that you can use this to further your business.
So let's start getting to some meat on the bone for SMBs that are out there watching this content. How it can help you compete, how it can help you, if you're a university, attract better students, more qualified candidates, how you can sell more yogurt, sell more shoes if you're in that business, how you can get more clients if you're a chiropractor or an auto body and you are trying to get more business. Let's go back to Safe Care Medical Center and Jordan Safey, and let's hear Jordan talk about some ways that he needs to be able to compete in the healthcare industry.
In order to provide the highest quality care to our patients, our physicians need immediate access to their medical records. All of our doctors, when they see a patient, they dictate into a digital voice recorder. That voice file then is submitted electronically to our transcribers who actually sit in India, and they transcribe while we're sleeping, and we have the dictated note on our computer the next morning. Our physicians rely heavily on the fact that the data that they need to access is accessible anywhere, whether it's at their home when they get called at 9 p.m. at night, or whether it's at the hospital. So they can access our patients' medical records in a secure environment at any time and any day. Our physician success depends on our patients' trust in our physicians. And they trust us with their medical health care in addition with their medical records. And they know that our records are secure and that nobody else can access those medical records except for our staff or our physicians.
So we're here on our series, our three-part video series online here called Forecasting the Personal Cloud. We're talking about all the things that go along with a personal cloud for you and how it can help you do business better. But again, let's focus on the real important thing. What problems is it solving for your business? We just heard Jordan there talk about what it takes to compete as a 2-office, 5-doctor practice. And what he said was, and getting to know him a little better, is they offer a personal service. They're able, with a group and several doctors, to still treat it like that old practitioner that wants to treat the mom, the pop, the grandkids, and all this and that. And doing it by solving some of his data situations.
Well, that's it, right? You want to be able to have that doctor be able to have access to those files when you call them at home and be able to get back and not have to say, well, I got to call you in the morning because I don't have your files right in front of me, and be able to provide that personal service. Plus, they're being required to do some of those things as time goes on, and really to compete in today's world. People have a certain level of expectation in terms of your ability to access your records. So I think that's big.
Let me make this really personal and really relevant right now. So in preparing for this show, we had a little bit of a rundown written up by Phil, our producer, right, who sent out a document about what we're going to talk about today. I had written some notes on that document on my computer at home. I'm here with my iPad. I pulled it up via my storage device and my cloud thing to be able to pull it up and have it right here in front of me now. That's real. That's how it works. Access
That's
anywhere.
a great example. It's a perfect example.
Just thought of it, but hey, it
One
works.
other case study, and the other company that we'll be working with on episodes 2 and 3, besides Western Digital and Thecus, will be QNAP. And this is an interesting one, guys. This is clearly an SMB. It's out in Portland, Oregon. It's a guy by the name of Dave Helfrey. The name of his company is Frighttown. We all have heard of these, and everywhere, wherever you live in the country, whatever, someone has a haunted house type of thing. Think of what he's done with his haunted house business. From December to June each year, he's a freelance art director and illustrator in Portland, Oregon. But in July through November, he turns into Baron von Gulu, the creative mind behind Frighttown. What started out as a garage event has turned into 40,000 square feet of terror at Veterans Memorial Coliseum near downtown Portland each October. As he's grown this business, his data has just exploded. To keep up with all that's going on, DVD players, all the things he's trying to do. In a performance industry, he uses a QNAP network attached storage device that's powered with an Intel Atom processor inside, and has been able to attract more, build his business as customers go. How many other small businesses in a niche industry like this have had to either turn people away or their business fall by because they weren't ready for the explosion?
Right. Well, again, I've hammered the point home. I think the beauty of the ability to open up the personal cloud is the fact that you can do this very, very quickly and very easily. And it doesn't take a huge infrastructure, and it doesn't take, for all you IT managers out there that are doing this all by yourself, you've got to take a look at these personal cloud devices because it allows you to do that without a heck of a lot of overhead. We were, again, I get to a real world story. We heard about these devices first at CES this past year, and we didn't believe it. And I came home and I said, John, we got to take a look at this. Why not? We'll just buy one. We'll take a shot and see if it lives up to what it. And we bought one, and we were so blown away. We bought two more right away. I mean, that was like because we could not believe it. Had that ability. So all of those businesses out there were affected one way or another. It's really the ability for somebody like myself, where I work on my laptop, I work on my iPad, I work on my home computer. Every environment is the same for me. I work on my home computer. If I edit a file and save it locally, I go to my office, the same file's there. I no longer have to worry about syncing anything, or did I move that file? I got to email myself the file because it's not going to be in my office like you were talking about earlier. You don't have to worry about that anymore. It all happens seamlessly. And if you want to back up those, these devices to the cloud, you can even do that. You can back it up to Amazon. You can back it up to Mobi.
Sure, or
You're asking the wrong
whoever,
guy.
any of those.
Right. All of those.
I'm still trying to figure out zettabytes. So.
Yeah, zettabytes. You'll be thinking about that one for a while.
All right, we've talked about, let's get to some takeaways here for SMBs and advice from you guys. You guys are experts in this when it comes to it. You're doing it in your own businesses. You're doing it with clients. So let's give them some advice. We've talked about a definition of the personal cloud. We've hammered home the points that, in our opinion, what makes it personal is the local part of it, the customizable part of it. We've given examples of specific companies that are working with Intel-powered devices to do it. Let me bring up three particular questions that I think, and we've discussed this before the show, obviously, that you guys are going to talk about, that you have for advice for SMBs. And it starts with the first one. Audit my data. Really, talk about this, guys. What are you saying to people? Have you audited your data? Have you looked down to see what you're doing?
I'll say that to me, it's not necessarily you need to audit your data all the time. I'd say you need to look at your business and audit what it is you're doing. I love the example that you gave about the Monster House, because how idiosyncratic is that business? Right. Who would think that necessarily that's a good example of where this can be useful, right? So take a look at your business, see how you can leverage this and take advantage of this. I think that's the first step in this, is how can I improve or be more comfortable in what I'm doing day to day.
So when it comes to auditing your data, Nick, how do people start? What does that mean?
Well, I think you talk to your employees, you talk to your team, you understand what do they access, why are they accessing it, what do they need, what would make them better and faster, more efficient if they had access to it in different places, different ways, shapes, or forms. I mean, that's the start of it. And then to Scott's point at the beginning of this was making sure that you catalog it in a way that makes it easier to find, right? How do I know how to search for my data? Because with the proliferation of data, with all of this content that we're creating, whether it be tax returns or legal documents or invoices or whatever it is that we're storing and digitizing, we need to be able to find that and search for that. So you want to set up some logic around how you're searching for your data.
And if you're an SMB, you know that the CEO, is the chief everything officer. So you could sit there and say, well, the IT guy will figure out where my data is, how I'm going to use it. No, you need to walk around the office when you audit your data and find out all these things that these guys are saying. Where is it being stored? How is it being accessed? Who needs to get it? Which leads you to the second question that you guys bring up, and this is a good one, I think, understanding risks. You need to understand well, I'll ask this as a question. You need to understand the risks that if you lose your data, if there's a breach, or even more importantly, you need to understand if you're being inefficient and the risks that are going along with that, don't you?
It's happened to me. I mean, I've had two instances. One, probably 10 years ago, where I lost half of my photos because I had them stored on a drive. That one drive failed, and you always tell people back up your data, and then they don't do it. And then you lose that one drive and poof, you're gone. Imagine if that was a business and those were business files and I lost 5 years of my financial records or whatever, law documents or whatever it is. That would be, that would just put you to a halt. So that in and of itself is something that you gotta be mindful of, is understanding that risk. And also understanding how this can help and start to alleviate some of those risks. How can you do that and set up some safe devices that have backup? I was mentioning we have one of these devices. We had a drive fail. They always fail. No problem. It gives you an error message. You call them. They FedEx you a new drive. You plop it in. No downtime. The device never got shut off. It was that easy. It didn't take a bunch of people taking stuff apart. You pop it out. You put it in, and you're done.
How about risks about if you're an SMB? That means you've got a smaller set of people who all are probably have an awful lot of information themselves locally. What if you lose one of those people?
Right.
Whether it's to a catastrophe or whether you lose them because they walk out and what they can take with them. I mean, that's your knowledge, that's your IP, that's your business. How much of that walks out the door with a person, right? And the point that you made earlier just a second ago was too, one other point you alluded to was, talk to your people when you're talking about the audit, talk to your people. I think you could sit down for 30 minutes right after this show and have a meeting with your folks and say, how could we leverage some of this? Where are we at risk? I'll tell you one thing. There was a study last year that basically people are coming out of college and not accepting even higher pay into companies where they don't get this ability to work with the devices that they want to work with and be able to have this access. Yeah. That luxury you talked about being able to work on one computer at home, then come in and have that all being there, you might have some people that are pretty TO'd that they don't have that ability if you don't have this now. That could be pretty frustrating.
Absolutely.
Well, so what you guys are saying is risk is well beyond what the common term sorts to imply, that, you might lose some data. But the way you do business is going to be affected. It's going to cost you to either get back up and running, or do you know that? When you go to audit, what you guys are saying is really understand what the costs are to you, both financially and in resources and in client satisfaction. That's right. That if you're not being efficient with your data, right?
We had that situation happen right here at the Pulse, right? When we had an employee, they got sick, we didn't know it was going to happen, obviously. They didn't show up to work one day, and all of a sudden we couldn't find any of the documents they had been working on. And we had that exact, what do you do, right? You can't call the client up and say, oh, by the way, can you resend us everything? We got to start over. You look foolish. You've got to make sure that you maintain that balance, and you can give access to people, but at the same time, it's all stored in a place that you can access. We talk about it here all the time. I don't want anything stored on a local machine. That's not stored in the server first. It's got to be there first, and if you want to have a local copy, fine, but you've got to store it up there first.
We solved it by when they got back, taking them out back and shooting them, but that's a different question. So let's get to the final question for SMBs. Accelerating my business.
Yeah.
So talk to me, I'm an SMB,
Yeah.
and when it comes to accelerating my business, what are the questions am I asking myself here at this point?
I think this is what it's about. I mean, I really think, again, when I was talking about the way you use TV before was just video on top of a radio show. Same thing nowadays. If you're just looking at this from the perspective that we talked about managing risk and that sort of stuff, no, it's about how else can I further? How can I leverage this in new and amazing ways? How can I how does this open me up to be able to hire people that are better experts than I might have on my team today that aren't local to me? And that's going to help me grow my business significantly. What customer service dimensions can I offer to my employees to get that loyalty? Can I offer to my customers to be able to maintain that loyalty that we all strive for right now that's very difficult to come by these days? So it's really about how can I accelerate my business? How can I use this in not just evolutionary but revolutionary ways?
Well, I love that point, Butch. I think that's the take home right there is we all have to open up our minds to how, leveraging data in a way that we can get access to it where we want it, when we want it, how we want it is absolutely critical in this day and age. And as Scott talked about, previously too, the new workforce is expecting, a different environment than we're used to. And if we want to be in business 5-10 years from now, we've really got to take this seriously. And the ability for us to really create this type of environment is what we, it's pretty amazing that you can do that in less than, a couple of hours and have all of your data secured. We talked about it here a year ago where we were moving data back and forth, and we had an IT guy spending a day a week just backing up data to different drives and making sure we had multiple copies of it. It's a nightmare. You can't afford that. It costs you too much money.
Yeah. I want one final thought from both of you. I'll give you a second to think about it. For an SMB, when you think of all the stuff we covered in this show, but one final thought about how they can do business better, sort of in their approach and in their thinking. And I'll take this moment to remind you that this is the first of a 3-part series. Just go to the pulseonpersonalcloud.com. If you're watching this live, send it to friends. It's free to register. If you're watching this on demand, August 2nd and August 9th are the next 2 episodes. They are Thursdays at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. In the next 2 episodes, we are going to have representatives from QNAP, Thecus, and Western Digital on our show talking about specifically powering the personal cloud, how they're doing it, their perspective on what's driving the market. And in our 3rd episode, we're going to take a deep dive into the products, the features, and the benefits of the top personal cloud manufacturers. They are the experts out there. They are providing solutions, providing the devices for people like you to help you do business more efficiently and more effectively. So again, we'll hear from them when they come on about their approach to this and how you should be thinking about it. Again, I think a lot of people get lost in the device and the gadget part of it. I think a lot of people get lost in the thinking about, I got to back up my data. We're talking about business intelligence here. Mm-hmm. We're talking about being smarter. We're talking about looking at your clients and them looking at you like, wow, these guys really have it going on. They can help me to do that. So again, one takeaway for SMB, what is it?
Well, again, I think that it's the day and age of mobility and content. You're generating more and more content, and you need to understand how to make it mobile, but at the same time have it secure. How do I do that? How do I get access to it? How do I give my people access to it the right way? And make sure that it's backed up and all those things that we talked about. And really, the personal cloud becomes your gateway to security, to sleeping at night, not worrying about, my God, if my building burns down, I'm going to lose everything, or I got to start over. I mean, we used to talk about that. Well, we have the data backed up in the office, but what happens if something happens to the office? Now we don't have any data. How do you create that level of security that, when I talk about security, I talk about you being able to sleep at night, knowing that your business, they talk about business continuity. Can your business continue and maintain itself if something catastrophic happens?
At DCG, we talk a lot about helping to navigate through the digital transformation. This is all about the transformation, and the transformation
Scott, repeat that again. You talk about how to navigate what again?
Help to navigate through the digital transformation.
Okay.
So overall, we have the notion of empowered consumers. They want to be able to get information immediately from you. That's sort of the same thing with employees. They need to be able to have instant access from anywhere, the ubiquity of the web, all those things. It's disruptive technology is what it's really talked about. And it's adaptive technology. Mm-hmm. Digital disruption, adaptive technology. And we talk to people about how to leverage that to be able to empower their business to go into new and different areas. And so this is, I think, what that's about. So once you've got that kind of level of security, you've looked at how can I maintain and ensure that I'm going to be safe, I think it's then, where can I take my business? What new offerings can I create? How can I work differently? How can I grow? How can I do some of those other things? And I think that audit that we talked about, those audits and looking in introspective, it's beyond just, how many megabytes do I need to be able to back up, or exabytes do I need to be able to back up? It's really zettabytes. Sorry, that was the confusing thing, right? So it really is about, where can I take my business and how can I leverage the cloud.
Scott Liewehr, President and Principal Analyst for Digital Clarity Group. Nick Saber, President of the Pulse Network. Gentlemen, thanks for your contributions to this show and this content.
Thank you.
I think SMBs are going to get a lot out of this. And you can continue to get more out of it by checking out the pulseonpersonalcloud.com. By the way, all the case studies that we used in this show and more, we have links to them up on that website, the pulseonpersonalcloud.com. Easy, free way to you to register to get the next episodes where we'll have representatives from those companies. And once again, we want to thank Intel for sponsoring this series, Forecasting the Personal Cloud. For Scott Liewehr, for Nick Saber, for producer Phil DiMartino and everybody else, and for Intel, I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. Thanks for being a part of Forecasting the Personal Cloud.